It's amazing how the sky has turned this color. In Tabraq, they say that dust storms have been hitting the region, creating an impressive phenomenon. They say that although sand and dust storms are normal, this one was very strong, claiming it's one of the strongest they've had in decades. This has happened in Libya. According to reports, the skies turn red in that part of the world. Another image that stands out today is this attack, a joint airstrike by the US and Israel, which hit the headquarters of the aerospace forces of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. This happened in the west of Tehran using 10 bombs, 10 heavy bombs that targeted an important command center. This is reported by those same operations, right? The same soldiers from that country who claimed that this command center was related to or linked to missile and drone operations. An obviously tremendous issue. Another image that has surprised people is what we're seeing here. In the middle of the forest on a Japanese island in Hokkaido, a geyser suddenly erupted.
Hace unos momentos, según lo que
The geyser is between 30 and 40 meters high. Impressive, Okutava walked by and posted this message on his Twitter account. Turned into a great army of the Japanese island, it has become a great Japanese army and has become one. He has become a great Japanese army, has become a great army of the Japanese island, and will continue to fight. The attacks will begin, he assures. He says that he will continue fighting against the United States and against Israel. So basically there is no change. No changes are reported in that regard. Although there are other sectors in Iran that supposedly say they are in dialogue, at least he says they are not. Today, several announcements were made, several important messages from world leaders. Among them are the Prime Minister of Australia, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and also Donald Trump himself. Let's see what all these messages are about, which obviously are part of the ongoing crisis, the energy crisis, and the war in Iran. Let's listen to what the Prime Minister of Australia says. Let's see what he says.
Fellow Australians, by nature we are an optimistic country. But Minister, let's listen to the A. Let's listen, he says. Minister, he says. Prime Minister of Australia, Minister, Minister of Australia. Let's listen. Which Prime Minister? Let's hear from the Australian Prime Minister, Minister. The diesel? Australia is not an active participant in this war, but all Australians are paying higher prices because of it. They're noticing it at the gas station and at the supermarket, and I understand that truck drivers, small businesses, and families are having a hard time. And the reality is that the economic impacts caused by this war will be with us for months. Tonight I want to speak to you directly about what the government is doing to protect Australia in these uncertain times, and also about what we can all do to help our country and help each other in the period ahead. On Monday, the National Cabinet adopted the National Fuel Security Plan. Leaders from both sides of politics across the country are working together to keep Australia moving, making sure that we are prepared so that if the global situation worsens and our fuel supply is severely disrupted in the long term, we can coordinate the next steps together. Today, we are cutting the fuel tax in half, reducing the tax on every liter of gasoline by 26 cents. Have those savings started showing up at your gas station yet? For our truck drivers, we have reduced the road usage fee for heavy vehicles to zero. Both measures will be in effect for the next. Working to lower fuel prices, produce more fuel here, keep it in the country, and bring in more fuel, using our strong trade relationships with the region to bring more gasoline, diesel, and fertilizers to Australia. Now, it's typical of Australians to want to do their part, and there are simple ways you can do it. You should continue with your activities and your life, with those of Australians and with your activities, your life. The fuel, the grain, Australians, simple ways, you should now continue with your fuel now. It's Australians, their grain. You should consider others, your community, the countryside, and key industries. And in the coming weeks, if you can switch to taking the train, the bus, or the tram to go to work, do it. That increases our reserves and saves fuel for people who have no other option but to drive. Farmers, miners, and workers who need diesel every day. And all those shift workers and nurses who do so much for our country. The coming months may not be easy. I want to be honest about that. No government can promise to eliminate the pressures this war is causing. I can promise that we will do everything possible to protect Australia from the worst of this. These are uncertain times, but of this I am absolutely sure. We will face these global challenges the Australian way, working together and looking after each other, as we always have. Thank you and good night.
Well, that's the message delivered by Albanese himself, the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia. Well, countries are already starting to prepare. They're starting to see gasoline shortages. They're already taking that into account in some places where workdays are being reduced, where people aren't going to work. So they stay at home, working from home. That's how it is. This war. And well, in the end, Iran is accused of somehow holding the global economy hostage to get out of the war. That's the strategy they're using. And well, it's a strategy that's creating increasingly intense pressure on that region and on the whole world. A message that also stands out is that there's a unified message from Starmer. Let's listen to what he says.
The conflict in the Middle East has now entered its second month. And although we are working quickly to achieve de-escalation and peace, it is now clear that the impact of this war will affect the future of our country. So today I want to assure the British people that no matter how strong this storm is, we are well prepared to face it. And that we have a long-term plan to get out of it as a stronger and safer nation. First, let me say once again, this is not our war. We will not allow ourselves to be dragged into the conflict that is not in our national interest. And the most effective way we can help with the cost of living in Britain is to promote de-escalation in the Middle East and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which is a vital energy route. To that end, we are exploring every possible avenue and diplomatic channel available to us. The Foreign Secretary and the Chancellor have met with their G7 counterparts. The Secretary of Defense has been in the Middle East engaging with our partners. And the United Kingdom has managed to bring together 35 nations around our statement of intent to jointly enhance maritime security throughout the Gulf. And today I can announce that later this week, the Foreign Secretary will host a meeting that will bring those nations together. For the first time, we will assess all viable diplomatic and political measures we can take to restore freedom of navigation, ensure the safety of ships and sailors caught up, and resume the movement of vital goods. After that meeting, we will also bring together our military planners to discuss how we can combine our capabilities and make the strait accessible and safe once the fighting is over. Because I have to be honest with people about this. It won't be easy. I spoke with those in charge.
Well, let's see. The message doesn't end there, but for now, let's take a pause because, well, it says they won't drag us into war. This makes it very clear that the United Kingdom is not interested in the conflict at this moment. And it goes a bit further. Listen to this.
This is not our war. We will not allow ourselves to be dragged into the conflict that is not in our national interest. And the most effective way we can address the cost of living in Great Britain is by pushing for de-escalation in the Middle East.
There he reiterates it, but at this point, let's just say, there it is.
Yossi, President Trump said yesterday in a social media post that he would no longer come to the aid of the United Kingdom. How seriously do you take that threat from our main ally?
It's important to make this clear. I've been under a lot of pressure to change my stance on joining the war, and I'm not going to change my stance on the war. So, whatever the pressure, whatever the noise, I am the British Prime Minister and I must act in accordance with our national interests. I must say that in matters of defense, security, and intelligence, we are obviously working closely with the United States, as we always do. And as far as planning in the Strait of Hormuz is concerned, of course, that also involves talking with the Americans. So, as I say, whatever the pressure, whatever the noise, my job as British Prime Minister is to focus on what is in the British national interest. That is what has guided me during this conflict so far and will continue to guide me as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. He made it pretty clear in that sort of mini press conference at the time, with this one as well. Well, in the midst of all this, other world leaders are expected to speak. So, we'll probably be seeing a bit more movement, talks, and conversations with these countries, but we'll surely see that later on. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is already calling for a ceasefire. Well, actually, he says that Iran is calling for a ceasefire. That's different. And there are many reports talking about messages that are supposedly being exchanged. And President Masoud Pezeshkian himself reportedly warned that indeed there is an exchange of information, he says, but not a negotiation. There are no negotiations. I mean, what the Iranians say is that there are negotiations, but no, there really aren't. Sorry, there are exchanges, but not a negotiation. He claims that, but you confirm they're in contact and communicating, which is important. Donald Trump sent out this message. Let's see if we can put it on the screen. He sent out this message that says the following. The President of the United States makes a statement on Truth Social, right as the markets open, that the president of the new regime in Iran, possibly referring to Masoud Pezeshkian, had requested a ceasefire from the United States, which he said he would consider. Once the Strait of Hormuz has been opened and is free and clear, so far we are bombing Iran to annihilation, or as they say, back to the Stone Age, says the Iranian president himself. An obviously tremendous issue, and look, within all this mess, within all these topics, the United Kingdom keeps watching and continues to publish. The United Kingdom's intelligence staff are publishing what's happening in Iran. Remember, the United Kingdom is participating but not attacking. Yes, look, that's the publication they made today. They have a report from the Ministry of Defense where they report today, April 1st. As you can see, they make their reports, military intelligence reports about what's happening. And they claim that they managed to shoot down just in the last few hours, according to what is known, 10 Iranian drones overnight. And this is good because there are high-risk areas that they are protecting in the United Arab Emirates and across the Middle East. According to the reports, F-35 jets, Typhoons, helicopters, etc., British obviously, carrying out a lot of military missions. According to the reports, they have 1,000 British military personnel deployed in the Middle East to defend the interests of the United Kingdom. There are defensive operations in the following countries: Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Cyprus, which is in the Mediterranean Sea, this island, Jordan, and Bahrain. United Arab Emirates. Yes, I said it, right? Well, the thing is, there it is. This is the defense approach that the United Kingdom has. Also, on the other hand, there is a reaction from Tehran, from this country, in which they say, well, Aragashi, the prime minister of that country, would have sent a message that is, well, key to understanding what is happening. In the end, he has been one of the most communicative figures. In the end, that's his job, isn't it? To establish relations with the outside on behalf of Iran. That's the position he holds. And up to now, well, he is someone who continues to operate, not a figure close to the former supreme leader. And for now, well, he also continues to operate with the new supreme leader, assuming that this new supreme leader is actually in office now. What does he say? Does he say, Iran has officially accused Ukraine on this occasion? I mean, accuses Ukraine of actively participating in the war against Tehran. The accusation was presented to the UN in a letter addressed to the Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez and the Security Council. Does anyone know where Antonio Gutierrez is? Has he appeared in this war that's lasted over a month? Where is Antonio Gutierrez? Rafael Grossi has appeared. Even the director of the WHO has appeared. And Antonio Gutierrez, where is he? According to what is being reported, Iran claims that Ukraine would be legally responsible as a participant in the conflict according to international law. Ukraine responds forcefully, calling the accusations lies and noting that Iran has supplied thousands of drones to Russia. Kyiv claims that almost 60,000 Iranian drones have been used by Russia against Ukrainian territory since 2022. In addition, there have been advisory support and also Iranian military infiltrations in Crimea, a region invaded by Russia. Ukraine insists that it has not directly attacked Iran, but only shares experience on how to shoot down drones, something that several countries have requested. Zelensky said over 10 countries have asked Ukraine for help defending against Iranian drones. Tension rises even more when a high-ranking Iranian official like Abbas Sargachi, sends messages like this. Now, the United Arab Emirates is also issuing a warning, as I mentioned earlier this morning, a little earlier, that the United Arab Emirates, they claim they're about to join the conflict and are negotiating to get involved. They're seeking an alliance with Asian countries. We'll see if that succeeds. The United Arab Emirates Minister of Industry also responded. Sultan Al Jaber issued a global warning. The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran is extortion against the global economy. This strait is one of the planet's strategic points, he says. Approximately 30% of the world's liquefied gas passes through there, as well as 20% of the world's oil. The impact, he says, is being felt and will continue to be felt in energy prices, transportation, and food. Well, here in Mexico, fertilizers have already gone up by 53%. Here in Mexico, fertilizer prices are rising a lot. That will clearly impact what we see at the supermarket. In Asia, some governments are already implementing extreme measures like reducing the work week, fuel rationing, and cutting back on air conditioning. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, there are warnings that there's a geopolitical shift by the United States, where first it gets involved in a conflict and then now it announces that it's going to pull out. But in a position where it's under pressure by whom? By the MAGA crowd, by the Republicans most allied with Trump. The United States announced a historic strategic shift to stop assuming responsibility for the security of the Strait of Hormuz. Who's going to take over? So then, Iran will control the Strait of Hormuz and China will manage and protect it. Who is it that, if the United States pulls out, who will be left there? Donald Trump made it a condition that any ceasefire with Iran in the strait must include opening the strait in order to have a ceasefire. Europe is left in a very delicate position. Why is that? Because Asia? In general, it accounts for about 80% of the oil that passes through there. If globally it's 1/5, yes, but for them, it's everything. For Asia, 80% of what they consume comes from that region. So it's about paralyzing Asia, paralyzing Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, even China itself. India. Because, right, they have no oil left. There are already restrictions too. And long lines to go to the gas station for gas too. Well, the thing is that things get complicated in the meantime since they're waiting for a World Cup. What's going on with that? Is the American citizen ready to welcome people and hear them cheering for their country? Apparently not. Look, there were some Iraqis, many of them already born in the United States but of Iraqi origin, and they support the Iraqi soccer team, right? So they were at the airport. There they are. They were at the airport cheering, shouting Iraq, Iraq, because there was going to be a match. They were coming to Monterrey from Texas. Iraqis who live in Texas. They were coming to Monterrey to watch the match. And they were attacked by people, by citizens of the United States who started yelling at them to be quiet. Imagine when they see people from all over the world cheering for their flag. Mexicans shouting Mexico, Mexico, and every kid cheering for the country they're supporting. Because in the end, that's what the World Cup is about, a celebration saying, hey, I'm going to win. No, you are. But in the end, it's just a party. And this person, well, these people got angry and took away their signs, took their flag. I mean, they got really intense. They even called ICE to come over there.
From Malvegius Laulanos.
Vikanex Nobian. He arrived, he's American, he arrived, he's American. And, well, they told him, hey, relax, we're here for the World Cup. I don't know if the guy cared at all. And, well, things got pretty intense there. This guy, this character who's wearing pink and, orange. The one in pink is the one who calms him down. It's about joining here. And the one in orange is the one who, well, knocks down, takes away their sign. Just imagine, I mean, that's the polarization that Donald Trump has generated for years. And they want to host the World Cup. How are they going to welcome the countries of the world? The truth is, it's really unbelievable. And, well, that's how things are right now. Now, let's move on to other interesting topics as well. Look, there are more images of what's happening with the red skies that appeared over there in Libya. But they're also appearing in other regions of the world where this red sky can be seen. For example, in Greece, in Crete, the sky also turned completely orange-red. It's a topic that obviously draws attention today and also did yesterday, right? So, well, that's how strange the weather is right now. And, well, let's move on to another topic. Another image, also surprising, happened during a big fire that swept through. That's what they're reporting. In Acapulco, it destroyed 700 cars. The wind and an out-of-control fire caused 700 vehicles to be destroyed. According to reports, around 700 cars were affected, and many of them were obviously destroyed. It's serious. Something really intense happened over there in Guerrero. And well, there's also another matter that draws attention. It is being reported and confirmed that the Iranians reportedly fired cruise missiles at Qatar this morning. It is known that the Aqua One, a fuel tanker from Qatar Energy, was hit directly while two other missiles were intercepted. Qatar has the largest US air base in the Middle East. Qatar hosts this huge base. And that's also why, for the Iranians, it's one of the essential targets, right, for them. So we're seeing how drones keep being launched, missiles keep being launched against, well, US bases, or in any case, also against the infrastructure of neighboring countries. Well, that's also an important part of what's happening. By the way, another topic that was just mentioned is that it's crazy. Tron just said this. Listen to this. Tron just said it. That he's going to stop supplying weapons to Ukraine unless Europe joins in reopening the Strait of Hormuz, meaning he's going to stop sending weapons to Ukraine. In other words, it's full-on extortion from Tron, saying if it's not this, then I have that, and well, that's how things are, right? It took him long enough to put out a message like this. Well, more images keep coming out from Crete, Greece, and Libya. Let's take a look at a few more of those images. Of this red-colored sky, right? There's one and here's another, subhanallah. Impressive to see. See weather conditions in this region. Let's go to the map. It's this region of the world. Let's see. Here it is, there it is. It's Libya, it's this part, Greece, and here is Crete. So does that mean that based on the reports we have, it's this area? It must be a huge cloud of dust and sand that makes the sky red in that area. We'll see if the phenomenon occurs in Egypt, Algeria, Turkey, and other countries in the area. But that's crazy, isn't it? Especially right now when there's a conflict so close by. Seeing these kinds of images is like something out of a movie, isn't it? It really seems like a metaphor for what's happening in that region of the world. Hey, if you're there, if you're watching the live stream, okay, give it a like and go ahead and share it. It seems like we're on Telegram. Over there on Telegram, we're always reporting what's happening in the world. Obviously, we're trying to keep you updated several times a day, with analysis, but also with data and facts about what's happening in different parts of the planet. So in a moment, we'll be on the report. Another thing that draws attention is that, well, Artemis will make a flight of about 10 days around the moon. The interesting thing about this is that they will be giving live updates constantly. For all 10 days, they will report live on how Artemis's flight is going. It's about testing a spacecraft that for the first time will be going to the moon. They don't want to land it yet. First, they want to make it go all the way around the moon. If they manage to do it in 10 days, it means that the spacecraft, well, if you analyze it, there's not too much risk, and Artemis is working, right? This Artemis project, well, if it works correctly, then they're going to go to the moon. They're going to set foot on the moon again. But for now, it's just 10 days of going around the moon. Isn't this really interesting? And well, we'll be discussing it in detail later on. In the meantime, let's move on to the next story. Check out this image. Something is happening with Donald Trump. You can see him. He's in this car, the one they call the Beast. That's him. There goes Donald Trump. According to what the president reports, Trump supposedly went personally to the Supreme Court. This was to witness the oral arguments about ending birthright citizenship. What they want is for people in the United States to no longer be from the US. In other words, if your parents are from outside, then you're no longer American. That's what he wants. That goes against the Constitution of the United States. So, well, not everyone agrees with that, because in the end, that's what the US did. Was a country like it is now, to take those away, to take away the essence. The US, and it's an issue that has upset a lot of people, but well, that's where this whole thing is heading. It's a tremendous moment, and it's a discussion that has been going on for years in that part of the world. By the way, well, oil is still above 100, although it's right at 100 right now. It's at $100.45. According to the reports, it's at $100. Oil has gone down. We're even seeing it at 99. And the 100 haven't managed to bring down the price of oil, at least not for now. Something is going on, because this drop isn't normal, especially with the conflict ongoing. They're still attacking Qatar and children, yet oil prices are falling. Could it be the reserves right now, or what's happening? Well, we'll be analyzing that later on. Later, we'll see if we'll talk about the waves of attacks they're launching, because they're still attacking Iran hard, and the attacks could spread outward as well. So we'll talk about it in just a moment. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you in a moment. See you soon.